Insiders, thank you for tuning in to Keeping It Real with Miss T, where we give you the real tea with a twist on Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, where there's always something good to talk about. On this episode, we are going to discuss human trafficking, which knowledge and education is the starter kit of understanding the issues of how human trafficking affects communities across the globe. Tonight, our special guest will educate us on how we can make a difference and so much more. The late, great Nelson Mandela quoted best, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Joining me this evening is this amazing, beautiful woman, Miss DeAndre Marshall. For 25 years, she has worked with the nonprofit and faith sectors, creating programs and opportunities for persons of all ages. Most recently, she was an achievement coach, working with parents and their children in setting and reaching personal, professional, and educational goals. She also consulted with the National Center for Civil and Human Rights Women and Girls Collaborative, planning and executing programs for women and girls focused on the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals number 5, achieving gender equity. DeAndre was introduced to human trafficking over 20 years ago as an art therapist for girls residing in Angela's house, one of the first safe houses for sexual exploited girls. She has also consulted with YouthSpark and other youth-serving organizations. Two of her passions are facilitating 2 programs, which she created: YouNiquelyYou seminars for tween girls, educating them on their menses and self-esteem through art therapy classes she conducts for children living in underserved communities. DeAndre received her BA in English from Austin Community in Sherman, Texas. She is also a graduate of the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia. She is a recent graduate of the Islamic Speakers Bureau Leadership Institute. Oh, wow. Congratulations on all of those accolades and achievements, DeAndre. And wow, what a dynamic woman you are. And we definitely are loving and excited to have you on this platform this evening. So we thank you for your time and energy. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. T, for having me in this space. This is awesome. I am so excited to be here with you this evening.
Absolutely. So let's just get started. Let's talk about, well, first, before we do that, is there anything that I left out? So we don't want to miss anything of your greatness, anything that you wanted to add that I may have missed.
No, I think you have covered it all. I'll just say, let me just tell a little bit about, you mentioned that 20 years ago, I started doing this work, and I did. I had a mentor and a sister friend who I'd worked for previously, and she knew that my gifts and graces lie in working with girls. And when I say girls, it's all ages of girls, but I focus primarily on girls 9 to 13 years old as far as my nonprofit is concerned. But the woman that I speak of is Deborah Richardson, and she actually was one of the first persons to address the issue of human trafficking in the courts in Fulton County. And so I always like to acknowledge her as my mentor and my sister friend. And one day she called me and asked me about coming out to Angela's house. They had opened this house for girls who were previously trafficked. And it was a safe place, and down in Fulton County in Palmetto. It no longer exists there now, but it was a safe space for girls who had been previously trafficked to go and live once they were in the court system. And she just said, "Do what you do with girls." And I said, "Oh, wow." So she said, "Come up with a platform, things that would be therapeutic for them as they are living in the house in that space." Because the idea of the house was to try to rehabilitate them and offer them counseling and ways to try to address the trauma that they had been exposed to being trafficked.
Wow.
And that began my my journey with working in the space around human trafficking. And I say, when I do trainings, I say it's 19 years too long that we have been talking about these issues. But when people don't understand that they are a part of the problem, then this continues.
Oh, wow, wow. Well, and thank you for that additional share. Now, before we get started on the meat of what human trafficking is and the rest of the information, can
Mhm.
you just let us know, tell us more about Uniquely You? Some of our
Oh
things.
wow.
Yeah,
So
let's just talk about that.
okay, so Miss T, we're gonna talk about it all, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
so I have two girls myself. And when they were younger and approaching that tween time, I started to look for something to explain to them their menstrual cycle and how that changes their lives forever. And in doing so, I couldn't find anything that met the need that I saw at the time. And granted, this was about 18 years ago now when I started to think about this. And I just asked God to give me something that I could use to not only talk to my girls, but to talk to any girl that I ran across, that it would be helpful for them. And actually, that's what happened. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. Uniquely You is a conversation with tween girls that helps them maneuver and understand their menstrual cycle and the changes that happen as they become young ladies. And the part of it that's a little bit different than people who are talking to tweens now is that I talk to girls about celebrating becoming, because it's so taboo when you look at the menstrual cycle. And that's not only in the United States, that's across the world, that this is a taboo topic.
Mhm.
And, and that's how Uniquely You came to be. I've been facilitating conversations now for many years, and just talking to girls about how to celebrate something that happens to them that does not happen to a male person.
Absolutely. So I tell you what, that's going to segue into another show. So we're going to definitely have you back on to talk more about Uniquely You and how girls can and women can understand their menses. So I'm loving that. And so thank you for that awesome share of just a portion. Because like I said, we are going to have you back on just to focus on that. Sounds good?
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a
Absolutely.
plan.
Good stuff. So, all right, let's touch on what we came here for this evening on this episode. And that is talk about human trafficking. And let's start with educating the listeners on what human trafficking actually is and the all of that it encompasses and describe just such a horrible act. What is it exactly?
So, we really, when we start to talk about human trafficking, we have to talk about it in two instances, because the definition of human trafficking involves the force, fraud, or coercion of any human being for labor or sex trafficking. So that's your baseline definition that we talk to people about: force through force, fraud, or coercion, and that can be children and adults. So that's the basic understanding of what happens when a person is involved in human trafficking. It happens through labor, it happens through sex, it happens through servitude. So those are the three ways. So it's almost like an umbrella, and then you have these levels that happen underneath the umbrella. But a split off from human trafficking is, and you'll hear people talk about that, this is child exploitation.
Mhm.
And the reason why there's a separation is because on one hand, you have human trafficking, where you have just a broad definition, but with child exploitation, you're talking about children under the age of 18.
Mm.
And so that's when we talk about what is so severe. It's bad. All of it is bad. And trafficking has been happening for years without a title. But the sexual exploitation of a child is what the organization that I actually train under focuses our attention on. So that which is deplorable in itself, and And I'll give you some examples of things that have been happening right here in our community in
Mhm.
the Georgia area. But yeah, so when we talk about this, we're talking about people who their lives are put at risk um, by people who have no regard for them as human beings. And they force them to do things. They use fraud as a way to keep them involved in it, as well as coercion. So that's and with children, with children under the age of 18, they have no understanding. And that's typically what a kid will say when they get caught and arrested for trafficking. It's like, I didn't have any knowledge about what was about to happen to me.
Wow.
Uh, so yeah, that's a big issue.
So is human trafficking like one of the fastest growing criminal
It is.
in the industry?
It is. So it is. Human trafficking is and one of the fastest growing big businesses. So Ms. T, you have been in some of my sessions. I thank you for being an advocate and being here for us and using this platform. But the thing is that this is what I call the two B's, big business. And it
Wow.
continues to happen because sometimes people don't understand what it is and they are part of it without even understanding it. But other times it happens because it's a way for people to make money off of human beings. So without regard for life.
Wow. So it's very profitable.
Yes,
Oh my
yes.
gracious.
Yes, and I don't talk about the money that is stated that the average trafficker makes in just Metro Atlanta. If they have a profitable business and they have people that they are selling, they can make a lot of money. And I definitely don't talk about that with the teen
Oh,
groups that I work alongside, because I don't want kids thinking that this is something that they should use as their way of making a living.
right. Because we don't want to make it seem like it's, oh, this is something you should get out there and do and
Right,
educate them on that. This is not, we're not encouraging this behavior. We're
right,
trying to discourage the behavior, right?
right,
Oh
right,
my gosh.
absolutely. And
Wow.
that's one of the reasons why we continue to update our teen deck, our college deck, and then we have the little red video that we share with people to begin these conversations. But with teens, it's really important that they understand what human trafficking is and child exploitation, because of the mere fact, Miss T, I don't think in my lifetime I'll see human trafficking go away. I would hope that it would be eradicated in my lifetime. But because it's such big business and so many people make so much money, I talk to kids because we have to teach them that this is not the way.
Right.
So if we get them on board with understanding, then we can change the trajectory of what this looks like.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what are some of the key elements of trafficking or like strategies of human trafficking?
And so when we talk about the strategy of the trafficker, you have that person who is grooming, and I'm going to stay with what I spend most of my time talking about, and that's our
Mhm.
children. And
Right.
so the trafficker spends time online and in person. Now, since we were in a pandemic, we've been in a pandemic, and
Mhm.
we are gently emerging from the pandemic. The trafficker had found ways to engage young people online. So that was one of the things that they did. They learned how to profit off of kids online by luring them into trafficking without them, the kids not even knowing, on the games and the apps. Those were some of the ways that, they have started um, to talk to kids without even parents knowing it. So that's, it's a deceptive type of thing. Sometimes, now, other times the trafficker will be straight up with kids and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Would you like to roll with me and make money?
Wow.
They can be that blatant with the kid who may be in a situation of being vulnerable. And when I say vulnerable, Yeah, like at home. It may be a kid who is living in a situation where, the trafficker presents a life that's greener on the other side.
Mm,
That's an old school.
yes.
Uh, the grass, the grass is green
Yeah,
on the
on
other
the
side.
side, which we
So,
know that that's not always the case, right?
right. But the kid doesn't know that.
Right, right.
So the trafficker is presenting a lifestyle that the kid is maybe looking for. And the trafficker makes it so sweet, online, talking and engaging that kid, and this is what I can do for you, and this is what you can have, and a kid being susceptible and gullible and vulnerable, falls for the okie doke, as the kids say, and actually will sometimes run away from home. Other times, you know, they go missing, and that's what has happened as a result of that. So that's the trafficker. So Miss T, I want to tell you that the predator, which is something that we talk about at IHTI,
Mhm.
the International Human Trafficking Institute, which is located in Atlanta, and who I actually work for as the program director. We talk about the predator and holding that person, whether male or female, accountable for the things that they are doing. So the traffic you have is the person who is oftentimes on the street, but sometimes online as well. But the predator is the one who is in relationship with the trafficker often. And the
Mhm.
predator is the one who maybe is asking the trafficker to present these kids to him or her. So you have a multi-level organization happening here, where the predator may not be the one who is addressing the kid straight up, but is talking to the trafficker about getting the kids to him or her. The predator is the one that is online, um, at work even, recently, there was a professor from Georgia State arrested for, doing some things at work, as far as child exploitation is concerned. So you have these predators who do as much damage as the traffickers, but often they don't get caught. And so what we're saying is that we need to hold the predator accountable as well as the trafficker.
Wow. Now that's definitely deep. But who is most likely to be human trafficked? And is it really true that the number of males being trafficked is higher than females?
Well, actually, no, that's a misnomer. So
Okay.
the female population is definitely higher, especially where your children are concerned. But there is an element of boys that are being trafficked, and we talk about that and talk to young men and groups of young men and organizations about the fact that you are playing a game and you are online with a predator and you have no idea that you're online. And we just recently had a case out in Douglas County where that happened, where a kid who actually had a learning disability, he was autistic, and he was trafficked, and a 26-year-old man um, approached him online while he was playing games and was able to lure him away from his home, and came and got him actually, and took him up to New York. And that's where he was found. And when I say found, he had the wherewithal to contact his brother.
Okay.
He was contacted via Snapchat. Miss T, have you heard about this case?
No.
Oh, okay, okay. So maybe some of your listeners have not heard about it either.
So
But
share, please do share.
yeah, 16 years old. He was contacted on Snapchat. Um, and that person came down to Georgia, came to Douglas County, picked him up, and took him back up to New York. And, people were looking for him. And his mom actually said that, reported, now, let me say, she stated and reported that she felt like that is what had happened, even though she monitored his accounts. But this predator was able to lure him out of his home and take him up to New York. And he was found there in New York in a closet. But yeah, he had been trafficked, lured on Snapchat.
Wow. And that's very scary. So
Yeah.
that drives me to segue into, what do traffickers look for in victims?
So listen, it nowadays it does not have an actual definition. But another thing about, I'm gonna get back to your question, but I want to
You're fine,
say
you're fine.
another thing about trafficking is we don't know the amount of this that is happening,
Hmm.
because a lot of times it's not reported. You remember we were talking about the boys being
Yeah.
trafficked,
Yes.
the amount of boys being trafficked. So typically you will find girls who are going to talk about the fact that something is not right in a relationship, because that's the way they are typically trafficked through a relationship. Boys are trafficked differently. So when a boy is trafficked, they think that they have the power in a situation. It's that macho image that they're trying to portray. And as a result of that, the trafficking happens, and they are not going to report it because they are a male person and this is
Mm.
not supposed to happen to them. And so they don't talk about it. They carry that around with them. The girl, on the other hand, will talk about it. And sometimes in situations where the trafficker is caught, the girl is with the trafficker, or she speaks out on that person. And that's not always a male person, because females are traffickers also. So you ask about the vulnerability piece. Who does this happen to?
Yes.
It doesn't have a box anymore. It used to be a box where you could talk about kids who are in foster care and group homes, who are in custody of defects. That used to be something that you could just put a pin on and say, this is how this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
This is how the trafficker or the predator is luring. But that's not the case anymore. This is so unfortunate, but you have traffickers who are actually teaching students, trafficker, to how to become a trafficker in school.
Mm.
So sometimes kids are actually going to school with kids who are pretending to be their friends, and they are hired by a trafficker to traffic other kids to get them engaged in this type of behavior. So when we talk about vulnerabilities of kids who are involved in this, you can't take a paintbrush and stroke it one way or another anymore. You have kids who are from um, homes that disadvantaged homes that get engaged in this, and then the other extreme of that is a kid who is at home who is not happy. Maybe his parents are working, but yeah, it doesn't fit a box anymore. You have kids who are from refugee camps who fall into this. You have kids who are from um, um, minority communities who fall susceptible to this. You have kids who run away because the trafficker, this is their job. So 24 hours a day, this is what they're doing.
Wow.
They're looking for kids to
Wow.
to traffic, and that's both for labor and sex trafficking. So this you kids who have disabilities,
Mm-hmm.
that's another area where you find kids who may fall prey to a trafficker, and that could be a speech impediment, that could be a mental or physical disability. The trafficker does not care.
Wow. They
Yeah,
don't, they do not discriminate on who they choose.
no,
Wow.
not at all. It's such a sad situation to know that a human being would take the life of another human being and destroy it like that.
But how do you even spot a trafficker? Is that even, can you?
Yeah, so I want to just talk to the listeners about the fact, people talk about a while ago, I guess it was before the pandemic, they had this big thing going around on social media about um, the white van,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
being careful about the white van in Metro Atlanta. So there were white vans out, Miss T. I don't want people to think that that was not someone's reality. People were being engaged in trafficking through um, people who were using vans, and typically those vans were white. And I actually saw a van online that had been decked out. Someone that we worked with shoulder van. But that's not the case. Traffickers are wherever you find kids. They're in the schools,
Mm.
they're at the mall, they're at the skate rink, they're at the bowling alley. They are wherever these kids are. They're at Six Flags and White Waters. Not only just online. I'm just saying that these are the other places, spaces that you will find these people, because this is their job. This is how they make a living. And parents have asked me in the past. This is when I first started doing this particular training, two years ago now. People would ask me, well, what's the danger in my, allowing my kid to go to the mall by themselves? Great danger.
Right. Right.
Great danger. That is not the place where you want to use them as your babysitter, because the trafficker is there waiting for a kid to walk into a shoe store and not be able to afford that shoe, sneak up to them and say, hey, this is who I am. You don't have the money for this shoe. I can help you out.
Mm.
And the kid wants the shoe. They want the shoe. And oftentimes that's the way that a kid gets groomed. But the trafficker is always grooming. He or she is always looking for someone that they can exploit.
Wow. So they're like the chocolate factory or the candy store.
Oh
The
my
kid
God.
inside there and they just, oh my gosh, it is so, so, so sad. So what about how do we lift up the, difference between or educate the difference between child exploitation and human trafficking? Because they
So
are
with-
different, right?
yeah. So with the child exploitation, it really, we're talking about those who are under the age of 18. So one of the things is that 20 years ago, when I first started working at Angela's house, girls were being arrested for prostitution. So I want your listeners to know that if someone is arrested and they're under the age of 18, they will no longer be charged with child prostitution. They are actually being exploited,
Wow.
and the court systems find ways to assist them to break free of that situation that they found themselves in, sometimes not even knowing it, because that trafficker is convinced that young girl or that young boy that they're their boyfriend or their girlfriend. So that's one of the ways that they keep them engaged in a relationship. And besides buying them things and you know bribery, brute force, those are things that happens to kids who are being exploited.
So
And
they're like a pimp or a John, right? Is that
yeah,
what?
yeah, it's just that the language changed, Miss C. So a while ago, it used to be a pimp or a John, but that language changed to trafficker and predator. So, and that's with kids. So when you sometimes hear the news media talk about traffickers, you hardly ever hear them call them Johns anymore.
Right, absolutely. So do you
Mhm.
think that the community is are those words that need to be reincorporated so that people can understand? Because we hear predator, we hear human trafficking, right? We do hear that. But
Right,
some people of our age, we know those as what, pimps and johns. But
right,
it's kind
right,
of like we cleaned up the word, so to speak,
right,
and
right,
gave
right.
it a different name. Do you think that why a lot of people are not getting it, because it's been so, we've changed the language of it, which I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to give it layman terms and dumb it down for people so that they can say, okay, back in the days, this is what it was.
Right.
This is what we're calling it now, so
Yeah.
that they can start making sure they have an understanding that this is what you need to look for. Because I honestly think that people of our age or even prior to us may relate more to what they know as the pimp or the John. Now,
Right.
human trafficking and predators, yes, it's the what some people call politically correct, right?
Right. Yeah.
Politically correct is great,
Yeah.
but some people in different communities, you got to meet people where they are and speak their language so
Right.
they can understand and maybe come out to help
Yeah.
and be more aware.
Yeah. I think you have a point there. I just think that it was sterilized in the court systems.
Okay.
Um, and um, and I don't disagree with you at all. It's just so harsh
Yeah.
When you talk about a kid who is being pimped or
Mm.
or prostituted. So those words are very harsh, and I think that was the reason why they sterilized the word so that it would. I don't think it was about being more palatable.
Mhm.
I don't think that was it. I just think that it covers so much. When you talk about human trafficking, it's not just sex trafficking. So, we do have another portion of that that we talk about even in our trainings, and you've been there, so that
Yeah.
we talk about the labor trafficking, and then we also talk about the servitude part. And that so much doesn't fit into the pimping kind of
Right.
situation. So I think that may have been one of the reasons. I'm not really sure, but I know that it's been sterilized for, the words have changed, the language has changed around it.
And I can agree with what you're saying because it's so broad now and it's become
Yeah.
so creative. So I love the point, and it's actually going to be one of my asks, for you to touch on, talking about you had us take that test on
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the demand of slave free and buying for trade,
Yeah.
things like that. And oh my gosh, I went through mine. I'm like, oh Lord, my lists have gotten better now. Yay. I think I was at like 70. Now I'm down to like 15. Still getting there. So if you
Yeah.
can kind of educate,
Yeah.
the listeners are probably like, what the United States of America are you guys talking about? So
I know.
if you can kind of tell them, educate them on what it is we're speaking about and why it's so
Yeah.
important, because people don't understand that some of these companies and businesses that we're supporting and purchasing from, it's real. They're trafficking these employees,
Yeah.
and oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it was such an
I
eye-opening experience for me. And I was like, oh no, can I get a refund? And I don't like to go to the store to get a refund. This is
yeah.
serious business.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're laughing, but we're
Yeah.
serious at the same time because
Yeah.
people do not understand the
Absolutely.
magnitude of it all, right?
Right.
So if you
Right. Right.
kind of
Yeah.
educate them on that, so that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about, so they can feel included.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely want you all to be included in this conversation, and definitely want you to take a few minutes and go over to www.slaveryfootprint.org. I'll repeat that again. It's www.slaveryfootprint.org. And what Ms. T and I have been discussing around the labor trafficking portion of that falls under human trafficking, because in the beginning I talked about this being an umbrella, and this is the second part of the umbrella that we talk about, and that is around labor trafficking. And so much of that is happening even here in these United States of America, and people are not privy to it. Things are happening even in our own homes around labor trafficking, and we aren't aware of it. But if you will just go and take that little, I call it a quiz, but it's just a little survey, and it will show you how you are complicit and involved in labor trafficking without even knowing it. And Miss T, you're
Scary.
correct.
It's scary.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And the thing that I say to people who come and take our training is that this is not something that we think that you can change overnight. Like Miss T going back and asking, can I get a refund? It's something that you begin to ease into so that it's not a painful decision.
Yeah.
When I took that quiz of the survey, when I took it over 2 years ago now, I realized that I was also involved in labor trafficking. At the time, I had 27 people that I was responsible for hiring them based on my own consumer habits. So labor trafficking involves the exploitation of people through things that we are doing to just make our lives easier or just to exist. I mean, some of the things we do, we could change and it wouldn't make a difference in what we do every day. Take, for instance, I'm just going to use one and talk about coffee, the coffee that you drink. If you are a coffee drinker, there are a lot of children who are being exploited so that we can partake in coffees that we drink. And what we talk about in our trainings is beginning to change that and your norm becomes you actually buying coffee that is free trade. So that's what I do now, because that was one of the things that was on my list. I was drinking coffee that it was not a sustainable coffee. It was not fair trade certified. And I started to look for things that are fair trade certified. And there are actually stores that you can go in that they are very intentional about what they sell in their stores as much as possible. Aldi's is one of them. I love Aldi's, and I shop there because I know that a lot of the items that I purchase, they are fair trade certified. And that just means that these companies have stated and they believe that children should not be exploited for you to have what you want. Coffee is one, candy is another one. We
Mhm.
talk about that, during Valentine's Day and other times, but chocolate is another industry where you have billions of kids who are working on cocoa farms so that we can have the different types of chocolate that we want. But at Aldi's, they sell fair trade certified chocolate as well as coffee. So, you just have to be intentional. I encourage you to take the quiz, the little survey at www.slaveryfootprint.org, and it will reveal so much to you about the things that you're doing that contribute to labor trafficking. It's big business.
Wow, it is. I mean, and it's sad business, big,
Yeah.
sad, big business. I don't know how you want to word that, but
Mhm.
it's definitely quite heartbreaking. So please address the shifts in contacting children, youth, and college students, because I know we're talking about children here, but it
Yeah,
also unfortunately encompasses college students, which are becoming adults or young adults, right?
yeah,
Getting
yeah.
out on
So
their own.
yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that question. I think it's really important that our parents who are listening to us this evening understand that traffickers are definitely looking at other ways to engage our students, our scholars, and it's really sad, but we have to be vigilant as parents and as adults, even just as caregivers. I mean, if you have children in your care and they are not your blood children, you still care about them.
Right.
And so we want to talk about the fact that, the trafficker, especially during the pandemic, they changed the ways in which they were contacting our kids, and like I talked about earlier, but I want to talk about a little bit more, going to the games and the apps as a way to lure kids and to get them engaged in trafficking. So that's one of the ways that they started to talk to kids. I tell parents that we actually have a tool, and we use that as far as talking to parents about where the traffickers are, as far as the contact is concerned. And they're on all of the games. They're on all of the apps, and they're talking to our kids. So those are the kids who are under the age of 18 that we have a parent training that we talk to parents about how you can protect your kids online, some of the things that you can do. But listen, Miss T, I want to give one tip tonight, just straight up tip to our parents to if you are paying your child's cell phone bill,
Hmm.
if you are responsible for paying the bill, then I think that parents should have the right to take a look at their teens and tweens telephone to see what is happening. Because oftentimes kids are being contacted through those mediums, but they're not saying anything to their parents because they don't want their parents to take their cell phones or shut down the games.
Right.
And I get it because that's the way that these kids communicate. But the tip is that you have to scroll phones.
Yes.
You have to. I mean, I have one instance where I had a grandmother who was raising her granddaughter. She was 13, and she was being contacted, you know, through her phone, her cell phone. And
Wow.
when the grandmother went to scroll the phone and found that this kid had been contacted. There was recently a situation up in Gwinnett County, Miss T, where there was a parent who her 10-year-old was at home. It was, the middle of the pandemic, and her 10-year-old was being contacted. And the mom was just horrified to think that her kid was on Snapchat.
Wow.
And this was something that was occurring, and all she wanted her daughter to do was be able to have contact with her friends.
Yes.
She was 10.
Yeah. And so are those are some of the other things that children and youth are engaged in online? I mean, that's
Yeah,
why Snapchat, some of these social media things that the kids want because it's so popular. Oh, well, my friends are on this.
right,
It's just this little thing, but they don't understand. It may be
mhm,
little to them because they're innocent. In their mind, it's all
mhm,
innocent and they're using it for something innocent, not
yeah,
understanding that
right,
there are those that have hidden agendas
right,
or not that, want to do something else.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their conversation is way above these kids' heads. And when they start to groom they don't care that they're 10. In fact, we have had conversations with different police departments and sheriff's departments, and we know for a fact that predators, um, unfortunately, they say the younger the better. The younger the girl, the younger the boy, the more money that they will pay specifically for that kid. And it just ruins a child's life.
Yeah.
But that's one of the ways that the games and the apps. I mean, the predators and traffickers are now even on, and you've heard me say this before, they're on places like Pinterest.
Mm. Wow. That's crazy. So
But think about it,
it's a
Miss
form
T.
of brainwashing.
Huh?
It's a form of brainwashing.
Oh yeah. So yeah. Well, a form of it, brainwashing. But you have to engage them before you can brainwash them.
That's true.
You
Yeah.
have to find a place to engage them. And so that's one of the spaces. Because on Pinterest, what do we do, Miss T, on Pinterest?
Pin stuff, what we like, our interests, and we create boards and we build. And I see what you're saying. So they find out what a kid likes, what their interests are, what they're building, how they're creating. Wow.
You're so spot on. And I'm like, I love Pinterest. I go
Me
on. I mean,
too.
the holidays are coming up. You look for recipe. I mean, you just look for everything.
I was just on there the other day. I mean, I'm always on as a on a wedding and event company. I'm always on Pinterest.
Right, right,
My
right. You're looking, but the predator and the trafficker are there as well.
So let me ask you this. So that, oh my, listeners, did you guys hear that? I mean, we talked, DeAndre and I've been on so many of her trainings and they're all, you guys, she has to tell you guys when we get late, we're not closing out yet, not yet. But as we get down, she's going to tell you guys how to get involved and how to attend some of her trainings. They're phenomenal and they're eye-opening and you really become trapped, definitely want to know more about it. How can you be an ambassador? How can you get involved? Because it's eye-opening and it changes your life and you will not believe it. So my whole thing is I'm stuck on this Pinterest real quick. How can you even spot a traffic, predator on Pinterest? You can't
No,
because they're behind the screen. They're in search of you
right,
and how to traffic you. So they're just, they may contact you with some of the scammers, right?
right.
So are
Absolutely.
scammers part of that trafficking too? Is that
So I don't, I mean, all of it is a scam
it
because
is?
at the end of the day, it's all for, it's not going to come to a good end. So, with scams, that they don't come to a good end. But scammers can sometimes, the things that they do, it's, this the monetary thing. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about trafficking, you're talking about people who are actually trying to gain access to
Access.
you as a human being.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So,
So we have to move forward with this here.
okay,
Okay, I
let's
know
go.
people are not, or may not have thought about this at all, or maybe they have, and I don't know. Talk about the airport and misnomers about the parts that it play in being a hub for trafficking.
Yeah, so when we 3 years ago when IHTI first came into existence, so that's the organization I keep referring to that I work for.
Right.
When it first came into existence, it was the Super Bowl was coming to Atlanta. You guys remember that? The Super Bowl coming to Atlanta.
Mhm.
And in most major cities, when a Super Bowl is coming, there's a big effort, a big push to talk about human trafficking because a lot of it happens around Super Bowl time.
Mhm.
Not that it doesn't happen the rest of the time, but during Super Bowl time, it's just really big business. And a lot of traffickers are moving people across the country to get them to that city. And one of the ways that they get them to the city is through the airport. And that was one of the ways that the training started to happen to talk about these people moving these girls and boys through the airport. And so it took root, and it just grew that that's the place where trafficking happens. But I wanted to make sure that we talked about the fact that yes, trafficking does happen through airports, but the majority of trafficking that's happening in Metro Atlanta is happening on our expressways on 85 and 285 and I-20, because we are a major hub of a city, and people are moving people through cars and trucks. That's the way that they're getting in and out of our city on a daily basis. It's
Mm.
not so much that they're being trafficked through the airport, and that's not the biggest thing.
That's
When
a
you
misnomer.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a misnomer I mean, you do hear of trafficking in that manner, but that's not the biggest way that trafficking is happening in Metro Atlanta. It's happening, on our highways, it's happening in our schools, it's happening at the nail salon, it's happening at the African hair braiding salon, it's happening at the massage parlors, it's happening on the north side of Atlanta. It's happening when girls are trafficked from schools, high schools, up to um, those big plush mansions on the north side. That's how trafficking is happening. So that's the way that we want our communities to understand that, if you see traffic coming into your community and it's not cars that you recognize, and it's a lot of traffic and frequent traffic, and it's happening all times of the day and night, that's a high alert for you to begin to make contact with people who know how to investigate what's happening in our communities.
Wow, wow. So trafficking, they can be victims, they can be family members, right?
Oh yeah. So trafficking happens a lot of times with family members, but it's a hush hush and people don't talk about it. And but during the pandemic, now that was a big thing during the pandemic with kids who were being trafficked, right out of their homes. Um, but trafficking does happen with family members, uncles, and folk who are trafficking their own kin people, which is it's horrible for a kid who has been coerced and told that if you tell, this is going to happen to you. So yes, trafficking does happen. It's called familiar trafficking. So it's families that are involved in trafficking, and it's horrible that that happens to kids. And we had I know you remember, because working with the PTA, Maria Kostarfian, who was
Mhm.
the superintendent for the APS, sat with us and actually said that a lot of times kids have two jobs. One is to go to school, and the other one is being trafficked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what are some ways that parents can help their children and young people to be safe from traffickers or predators? That awareness.
So I want to talk to those parents who have seniors in high school. I really want to talk to you because, one thing that we kind of skipped over, but I want to circle back to it, Miss T, is to talk about sugaring and OnlyFans. And I'm not going to stay here long because we don't have a lot of time left. But I do want to make parents aware that there is a new platform that traffickers and predators are using, and it's big business. One is called sugaring. And when I was growing up, people had sugar daddies because boys really weren't involved in this. But now there are sugar mamas who are out there. And I talk about this in our training. But one of the ways that parents can have these critical conversations with their kids or have them join us for a critical conversation. But sugaring is has platforms now. I know of about 7, Miss T, 7 platforms where people are signing up online. Kids are signing up online to become sugar babies to meet their basic needs or things that they want. And the sugar baby, the sugar mama, the sugar daddy provides that. They have expendable income and they provide those things to these kids who are in high school or in college. College kids are looking for their tuition to be paid.
Hmm.
They may not have medical health insurance. They may want their car note paid or their car insurance paid. All of those things, these people who have this expendable income are willing to pay those things in return for sexual favors.
Hmm.
So with the sugaring, if you have a sugar mama or sugar daddy, they're not looking at the end result of that. They're looking at what they are able to gain from this. Unfortunately, on YouTube, they have places where kids can go and learn how to become a sugar baby.
Wow.
So that's the first one, sugaring. That's the way that you hear the terminology now, is sugaring. The second one that I want to tell parents about is called OnlyFans. And so for those parents who are, on social media, you probably have heard about OnlyFans. And it exploded during the pandemic as well, because celebrities who didn't have a means to earn money actually had OnlyFans pages.
Mhm.
And because they had so many fans, they could make, a decent living in the midst of the pandemic without leaving home.
Right.
But you had young people who were watching the celebrities make that money, and they decided that they themselves would, sign up and get an OnlyFans page. And of course, for the celebrity, it's big business. They make big money. But
Right.
for a high school student or a college student, they're not making, as much money. And so the person who is their fan is sometimes luring or coercing them into doing things online that they ordinarily would not do.
Wow.
So those are
They don't
two.
have the fan following. They don't have the fan base that the celebrities have.
No,
Oh,
no. So they're not making that money, but they want to make money. And so they do those risque things online that never go away to make that money.
wow. That's tough. So, parents, you heard that. You've got to be more intentional, like DeAndre stated earlier in the conversation about checking those mobile devices. There's
Mhm.
no, yes, there's a thing of privacy, but there's some things that there is no privacy. You
Right,
have to be more intentional in monitoring that because it's for the safety and protection of your child. And if
right,
you start them early to understand that and educate them and speak to them like human beings, you don't have to yell and shout, but speak to them to educate them. I think that's what we
right,
sometimes forget. You want to educate them, talk to them and explain to them the reason why. They may not
right.
get it the first time, but
Mhm.
maybe you show them, videos and have conversations about it and things of that sort on a regular basis. You can't just do it one time and drop it because the world is so creative with this social media. Something new is always coming out. like you said, DeAndre, about this OnlyFans. This came
Right,
out during the pandemic. So we know that possibly during the pandemic that all of this human trafficking with predators increased.
right.
Say that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exponentially.
Wow.
Exponentially, yeah. So and I mean, it's just so sad that people are not aware of it. So and that's the reason why I so appreciate this platform tonight, with you giving us an opportunity to talk over the airways to, to parents, to caregivers, to those who have an influence over young people, because you may not have a kid, but you may work in an industry where you have influence. And every time you drop some knowledge, and you said it earlier, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And so for kids who may run across this, I'll say this to you, Miss T. At the beginning of the fall, Clark Atlanta University invited me over to speak to their incoming students. There were about 500 kids in their space, and they leaned into that conversation. And not so much because they didn't know, but I think it was like somebody was really being real with them about what's happening in the world and how they can protect themselves. And they really appreciated it, so much so that I actually received some calls after that training from young people saying that they really appreciated it, because they had run into some situations just in the month after I came to Clark Atlanta. They had run into some situations where they felt like, had they not had the conversation with me, then they would not have had the information.
Right. So it's an opportunity to bring awareness, and we have to keep that conversation going, like we
Right,
keep so many other conversations going that's relevant, to talk
right,
about
right,
it and bring it to the forefront, and also educate ourselves on the change.
right, right.
Wow. So what can someone do if they have been trafficked, or if they know someone who has been trafficked? How can they, help?
Yeah, so one of the things is that IHTI, our organization, does not work to we don't do any rescuing, and we don't do any restoring, but there are tons of organizations who do really good work in Metro Atlanta with helping people who are in a process. They realize that this is what this looks like and this is what this is, or they have a child that has fallen prey to a trafficker. There are organizations, and we have partners, and I would be more than willing to share that information. Um, I'll just say YouthSpark is one that works through Fulton County. So if you're in Fulton County, YouthSpark is an organization that works with young people who are vulnerable, who may have been trafficked, or they may have gotten into trouble, and they will help them to try to restore their lives back to what it was before they came in contact with the trafficker. You have the Covenant House, so they work with young people who are a little bit older, like 18 to, I think it's like 24, 26. I'm not sure that age, but it does go beyond the teenage years. But
Mhm.
they work with young people, and they actually have residential, so they can actually house a young person if they've fallen into a situation and they need housing. There are other organizations around, the city that do a great work with helping young people and adults to address these issues. If you have a child who you feel like, I mean, in parents, your kids. So if
Mhm.
you have a child that you feel like something is going on, I would encourage you to reach out and get some assistance before it gets to a point where you can't. Well, not that you can't, but it's more difficult
Yeah.
um, to assist that child, um, because the suicide rate with our kids is really high, and a lot of times it happens because they're in situations where they don't see a way out.
Wow. So in what ways can the community, and this is
Yeah.
to kind of end our conversation here this evening, but what ways can the community and help organizations and survivors of human trafficking? What are some of those ways they can do it?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because just this weekend I was with the Atlanta 10th grade Jack and Jills.
Okay.
Um, and what I found was really interesting is that not only did they have me there to speak to their 10th graders about human trafficking, even more so the critical conversations with teens, but once we finished, they did a project to support Wellspring Living, which is is a nonprofit that works to rescue and restore young people and adults. And they put together like gift baskets, love baskets for these young people. So it was young people putting together gift baskets to give to Wellspring for their young people. Um,
Wow.
and so that's one way that I would say, it doesn't take a whole lot to do something like that, to get toiletries together and, get some paper bags even, and to write some, nice little encouraging notes. Because when people are in residential living, even though things are supplied for them, it doesn't hurt to have a little extra. So that's what these young people did this past Saturday, and I was so proud of them for taking the time to gather the things and get the things donated, and to create these little baskets for these young people. So that's one thing. The other thing that I say that people can do is that even in your own communities, if you know that there are places that are a little sketchy, to maybe we have cards that I can send you, that if a group of you want to go around and just talk to people about trafficking,
Mm.
once you learn something, to just go to a place and say, hey, can I put these in your restroom, these little cards? So if somebody comes in and they're being trafficked, and this is something that they can pick up and take with them, and it has numbers on there where they can report that they are in trouble or they need help. So that's another way, even just to begin these conversations. I mean, just to have a group of people join us online,
Mhm.
sign up and join us online. I don't have a problem. I would love to engage communities with having these conversations about human trafficking. And if you belong to a certain faith group and you have teen members or parent groups, to definitely have them engage in learning what this looks like, and maybe even attach one of those projects to that as well, to do something for someone uh, in the group homes or in the residential living facility. So that's another way. Fire stations, I've heard, of places where sometimes survivors go, and maybe making snack bags and taking them to the fire station for survivors that may come in. So yeah, that's another way that I would say that you could assist in a tangible way. But spreading the word is one of the biggest assistances that people can do.
Wow, wow. So thank you so much, DeAndre, for definitely coming on this platform. But is there any other nuggets or anything you want to share with the listeners before we depart this session? Because I know we're going to have you back on again.
Okay, so
Absolutely. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to tell you that you have to come back on again and share, because this relevant information is important.
yeah,
We have to
yeah,
continue to make it
definitely.
relevant, keep it relevant. So anything you would like to leave at this moment?
Okay, so I want to just let you know that on our website, and I want to promote this, we have a place called the Wall of Shame. And the Wall of Shame is a place where whenever we receive information about a predator or a trafficker who has been arrested or is up for conviction or has been convicted, and it lands on the news or anywhere, we post this on our Wall of Shame. So I want your listeners to go to our web page and take a look at our Wall of Shame. And you can go to www.ihtinstitute.org. I'll say that again, www.iht, and then the word institute.org. And look for the Wall of Shame. And what you will find are pictures of people who have been either arrested, they've been sentenced, um, but it's all about the predator and the trafficker. We don't have pictures of our kids up. We have pictures of predators and traffickers because they're the ones who need to be called into question and held accountable for the things that they do. So that would be my last ask of your audience tonight.
All right, good stuff. Well, hindsighters, you heard it here. Doesn't get any greater than this. I know that you were able to mentally, and even hopefully you wrote down some notes on the topic here tonight of human trafficking. And just remember to go out there and get involved, and how to bring awareness, and how you can do so about that is just learn about, educate yourself on human trafficking. Reach out to www.ihtinstitute.org. And also remember to go to that survey, www.slaveryfootprint.org. So www.slaveryfootprint.org and www.ihtinstitute.org, and check out that wall of shame so that you can make yourself familiar with those faces in case you see someone like them or themselves, so we can help bring justice for those survivors and those that are involved in human trafficking. Read a book about human trafficking, educate yourself, host a movie screening, attend a conference, listen to this training, ask DeAndre, can she train you guys? All those great things. Organize a Bible study, encourage your pastors and your rabbis and your priests and reverends and all of the above about, ministering and teaching a class and educating their congregations and their, people about human trafficking is very, very important. And investigate your state. Remember, buy fair trade products, demand slave-free goods, so much more. Take a look at the hotels you stay in. Make sure the code of conduct is there. It's just, the list goes on and on and on and on, but make sure you do your part in all of this and just bring awareness and to yourself and your family and so many other people. And so again, DeAndre, we thank you. We thank you for this evening and this great share of information. And guys, remember, this pandemic is also not over, right? So please continue to practice cleanliness. Yes, wash your hands, sneeze and cough in your arm, not in your hands. And if you have to do it, because that's what you forget to do, wash your hands thoroughly and say your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. What do we have to do to make sure you're doing that clean? Wear your mask. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to vaccinate or not vaccinate. That's your personal thing to do. But whatever you do, just be respectful of yourself and others. And until we meet again, have a great night. Good night.
Night. Thank you so much, Ms.